How's everybody doing tonight? Tonight's my 16th discussion. Run a little bit late, but tonight I'm talking with Brian Fair of Overcast, Shadows Fall, Hell Night, his new band Downpour. So it should be a good talk, old school hardcore, New England style. Just wait for him to jump on. Hope everybody's doing all right on a Sunday. Just waiting for him to jump on right now. Hope everybody's being safe. Wear your masks. Had a little time difference. He lives in the central zone, so we just got a little mixed up here. Usually I start at 6, but he's going to jump on any minute now, so sorry for the wait. Shouldn't take much longer. Should be jumping on any second. Here we go. Just waiting for him to... Oh! Let's try that again.
There we go.
Hey, what's going on,
All right,
Brian?
sorry. How's it going, man? Sorry, the internet was then and giving me problems too, man. I'm all over the place. Got time.
That's all right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, maybe he doesn't live in the east, so I was like, maybe we just got the times like.
Totally forgot, man. I was smart enough to Google Calendar it, and I still blew it. So see, look at that.
So
what's happening, man?
Nah, not much. Just trying to stay safe in this crazy world.
It's crazy, man. It's a hot spot around here. I'm living outside of St. Louis these days, and it's starting to uptick. Our kids' school just went back to full time at home again after trying to go 4 days a week. It's just crazy, man. So just making the most of the family time together and just figuring out.
Yeah. My kids have been remote since the beginning of the year. So I live in New Hampshire, so it's kind of mellow here, but it's rising every day. It's hitting a record here. So
yeah, same, man. And honestly, around here they weren't as quick to hop on the train as far as taking care of themselves as well. So it was an uphill battle to begin with around here at first. So it's just, which is more annoying to have spent the first few months completely locked down to watch everyone else kind of blow it.
yeah, seriously. I know. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this. I really appreciate it. It's awesome talking to you. I haven't seen you perform in I don't know how long. I think the last time was possibly that Dover show at the Skate Fest.
That's a long time ago.
way back in the day. Yeah, I know. It's been crazy, but just wanted to talk to you about hardcore in general from New England and what you've been up to nowadays, and just to start off, what got you into music when you were young?
Just really got kind of lucky being surrounded by some musical people like at early age, where my parents were always into music, and my neighbor was a guitar player. So like when I was super young, I was already like into Kiss and like early Ozzy and stuff like that when I was like, we're talking real young. My first cassettes I bought, I remember, were Ozzy, Bark at the Moon, and Men at Work, Business as Usual on the same day, and that was kind of like the beginning of it. And then I got to see a bunch of concerts early where a friend's neighbor took me to see Bon Jovi on the Slippery and Wet tour with Cinderella opening up. And like, that was the first arena rock experience, and was just like, all right, I'm in, I want to do that. I got to see Guns N' Roses open for Aerosmith at like Great Woods and stuff. And So I got on the train real early and started playing in like really awful mix of like glam metal punk bands when I was like in middle school. You know, like we wanted to be half Sex Pistols, half Skid Row. You know, like
Yeah.
and then honestly through skateboarding started finding out about like real underground punk rock bands. And you know, I remember I got Youth of Today, Break Down the Walls with my subscription, and that was kind of the first real hardcore I guess I'd heard. You know, I'd heard like some Black Flag and some other stuff, but the first time hearing kind of like Youth Crew like style hardcore.
Yeah.
And then I met Mike D through skateboarding. Like we were skating a ramp and met, and he was already in the local scene playing in a band. He was in this band called GG Pelon and the Grub Monkeys first. They were more like, I guess you like as middle school GG Allen as you could get. You know what I mean? Like where they're talking about like poop and stuff. You know, but like you know, not eating it.
Yeah.
You know? So and then but he had all these riffs that were like Cro-Mags kind of style stuff, and we started talking about starting a band, and I played bass and he played bass, so I was like, all right, I'll sing, you know, like, and that was being an Overcast. So
Yeah. Well, that's crazy that you were playing bass and then it kind of like got pushed into the vocal spot, because I mean, look where it brought you from there. You know what I mean?
Totally, yeah. I didn't plan on singing in any way, shape, or form, and then kind of just fell into it. And you know, that always seems to happen with like, if you're not that great a musician, but you're like the best skateboarder in the crew, you get to sing for the hardcore band in town. You know, I think those are the rules. At least they were in the early '90s. Those are the rules. If you could skate like better than the other dudes, you got to be the singer.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Overcast first recorded in 1992, was it?
Technically, we did a demo in '91, technically, but it was like 4-track in Jay's basement, you know, Jay Fitz's basement.
Yeah.
Just all live recorded, including vocals, and then we dubbed, you know, cassettes. That was called the Feel the Pain demo. I think that was '91.
Yeah.
There was a ska part.
Oh, really?
No, it was definitely a band who was trying to figure out what they liked. You know, like we were equal parts, you know, Cro-Mags Biohazard meets, but then we also like that Far Side 7-inch and some Underdogs we threw in a reggae part, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the first thing I heard was the Bleed Into One, the 4-song from 1992. I thought that was the first one.
That was the first real thing. Like we had a demo, like I said, the Feel the Pain demo, and then we recorded a live thing at the WAG, the Worcester Artist Group, in that was probably late '91, early '92. That, you know, just soundboard kind of demo. Yeah. That we then went and overdubbed some guitars on, which is funny to think that like we were so DIY and ghetto, but we somehow got to our live record wasn't live though. Our studio recordings were as live as it gets, but our live record was overdubbed.
Yeah. Now is that demo still floating around somewhere on?
Not anywhere on the internet. Like it's on cassette. I tried to get Mike D to put it like on something. And honestly, everyone's like, I have a master cassette, you know, like on an old XL2, you know, like it sounds so awful. And we were like, yeah, I mean, some things are, if you got it, you got it.
Yeah. And then did you guys come out with a cassette the next year? Like wasn't there a cassette that came out right after that? Maybe
yeah, we did the Bleed Into One 7-inch with Exchange Records, which, you know, was basically, you know, local dude we knew who wanted to put out records, you know, that's classic kind of, you know, super shady dude who putting out local hardcore records, you know. And then we recorded a demo. We started recording up at in New Hampshire, and we did the I guess it was on it? As a Whole. The heck else was on it? It was like a 4-song demo, you know, and that was the first time I think were like, all right, man, that sounds like close to what we wanted. Like Bleeding to One, we basically recorded live and overdid the vocals, and like still the first time in the studio, all that. So that second demo was our first time where we're like, all right, we're starting to like sound like we wanted to. That was when Sean Rounds was on second guitar as well. Then, you know, like, so we were starting to kind of figure it out. But definitely still baby steps at that point.
Yeah, but you guys were starting to play like a lot of shows in '92, weren't you?
Oh yeah, we from the beginning, man. We got lucky where before we were really a band, we convinced people at the Worcester Artist Group to let us play shows, and we didn't stop until '98. You know, like we just started playing every weekend pretty much. So yeah, by '92 we were playing a ton, starting to get like a little bit out of state. You know, like New England and then into like, Albany area and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Starting to meet other bands from different states we'd trade shows with. And those early days, we would trade with like this band Drown out in Albany, and then like Just the 14 and some of those bands out in Connecticut, just start trading shows and stuff. And that's back then, that was the only way it grew, was you had to just kind of know dudes booking shows in another state.
Yeah.
Just call them up and be like, hey man, we got a demo, put us on a show.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was always talking about people, about the struggle of trying to set up shows or just trying to find out about shows. If you didn't see a flyer at Newbury Comics or you didn't know somebody, then it was hard to find out about shows back then. And even setting up shows, I set up a few shows, and back then it was like I was writing letters to people, hoping the number was right on the phone.
It was straight pen palling, like hardcore shows was like the way it went, like straight up. So you'd like send a thing and then have to wait like just months to like hear back and be like, yeah, sure, we can do a show, like, all right, when? And then send another letter back. But I loved mail days back then because everyone would throw in as many stickers or cool other things or fill a cassette with just random stuff you might not have heard. And, it was cool to kind of learn stuff that way.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like the liner notes of CDs or 7-inches. You look at the bands like they thank, and you're like, oh, I got to check out that band. Or you see somebody with a shirt on and you go, totally. It's not like that nowadays where you can just click on wherever and get a little sample.
Things. Totally. Before, if you saw a certain font with like a dude on, like finger pointing in a crowd on the front of a T-shirt, even if you didn't know the name of the band, you're like, all right, I know what that's all about. And you like go talk to the dude. It's funny, yeah, but it's definitely back then it was super DIY to the point where you had to do everything. If you wanted a record, put it out. You may find someone who had already done a few, but you're basically, like financing everything and doing everything yourself. And all the shows were booked by kids, like literally.
Yeah.
So that would always be great when people would get like other bands would show up maybe from out of state or something, expecting it to be like a legit show, and it's just like some like 15-year-old kid. And they're like, I was going to kind of try and push him for money, but like,
yeah, you're like,
kid, man, like, all right, fine. We'll just drive home with nothing,
So what town are you from? You're from Massachusetts. What town did you grow up in?
Yeah, I was born in Framingham, and then I grew up in Milford, which is kind of between Framingham and Worcester, I guess, So, and that's where most of Overcast was from, Milford. Jay Fitz, Pete Cortez, and myself, we were all from Milford. Mike D grew up in Ashland, which is near Framingham. And then Scotty McCoo, who joined the band later, was from Leominster, Fitchburg area. So, which he was in Dive before Overcast. So that's how we knew him through the whole Twin Cities 90s hardcore scene up there at Club 490 and whatnot. So, but I grew up in Milford. So, in which we started going to shows in Worcester and Boston, which is kind of nice. I lived between Worcester and Boston, so it was just as easy to get to shows in both. Plus, Providence was super close. I lived right above Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So you could hit a lot of, without having to travel too far. So.
Yeah, you guys played Connecticut a bunch of times too.
A ton. Oh yeah, Connecticut almost for a while became better for us than Massachusetts as far as people being into what we were doing. Like shows at the Tune-In were pretty awesome. Which was early days, like Jamie from Hatebreed before it was Hatebreed. With Just the 14 would book shows either there, Bristol Bike Exchange, or a few other small clubs too. And the early days of Just the 14 Overcast were like a mess, man. We were there's a lot of bands in the scene where either straight edge or like super kind of PC dudes, and we were like, I don't know, we had one foot in the wannabe thrash metal, like mayhem side of things, like so. And all the Josta dudes at that time, Josta 14 guys, were just like kind of hood rats from like New Haven, so like we'd get together and just cause some serious trouble, man. It was good times. Whereas like a lot of the other bands, they weren't partying like we were, so like it just probably stood out at the time.
Yeah, with that brand of hardcore you guys were playing too, I think it spurred a bunch of Connecticut bands maybe to not sound like you guys, but maybe be influenced by you, because like that's when like Die My Will and Ground Zero and bands like that, like I saw you guys play with them a bunch of times. And
yeah, a lot of those bands did talk about how, like, well, at the time there was a lot of bands who were maybe mixing metal and hardcore, but we were doing it like with the screamy, singy things, which, again, other bands like Starkweather and, some other bands were doing that VOD. But we were just bringing that Slayer kind of riffs to it, which became super normal, like later, but like 92, 93, that wasn't happening as much for bands playing hardcore shows, but we still like mosh parts too. So
Yeah.
so we kind of had a mix. And then Connecticut really, there was a lot of bands that kind of after the two compilations on Endless Fight came out, the Over the Edge comps. The first one, Overcast, was on, and we had a sample. It was the Love Letter sample from Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
As a whole, and we were the only band on there that had a sample. We were super metal, and we had the most screamed, like, brutal vocals. The second Over the Edge comp that came out, every band but two had a sample at the beginning. Like, there was tons of screaming going on. We're like, oh, cool. But I mean, like I said, we'd already been influenced by bands like Starkweather, and locally by bands like Arise, who were from like Franklin, Mass, and even Dive, and bands who were doing slightly more extreme kind of screaming, but maybe with some metal mixed in, and that 90s like noisecore kind of thing. So there are bands that we got the ideas from, but I think in the early 90s we kind of put them all together, and then some other bands kind of were influenced by that sound. But we knew early on, we were like, we're going to be a band that other bands dig, and then a bunch of people at the show are going to stand around like confused by.
Yeah.
we knew our role super early on. So we're like, yeah, we don't get bummed when people don't mosh. Like we're actually trying to throw a hiccup in every mosh part anyway to, confuse people. So
yeah. By the mid 90s though, and towards the later, you guys were, I mean, it was full force. I in New Hampshire alone, I think I saw you guys play Safe and Sound maybe 5 or 6 times. I mean, it was
blast.
I mean, every time you guys played up there was amazing. And what did you think? What's your take on Safe and Sound and like Cafe Savoy in Manchester? And
yeah, it was great because that was honestly, especially Safe and Sound, remind me of we came up playing like the Space in Worcester and places like that had that just vibe where you're like, this is our place, not like a club that's allowing shows and we all got to be on our best behavior, you're like, all right, we've kind of established this is like the local hub of the scene. So I love playing up there. And like you said, like in that kind of 95, 96, when we were playing, we were getting, like a little more action, from audiences and whatnot. But that sound was also starting to kind of become the thing, bands like Converge and us and Bloodlet, and like, that was becoming the vibe at the time. So it was cool to be a part of that because there was so many bands just doing cool, different things. I grew up loving like mid 80s, late 80s hardcore, like, Judge, Youth of Today, all that stuff. But, after a while, the band started getting really repetitive and the second wave weren't doing much different. So I was glad we were kind of part of a scene that was starting to bring in some different influences and pushing stuff, which then got crazy in the early 2000s, when all those bands started either blowing up or starting new bands that blew up. So
yeah, it's true. I mean, hardcore died for a little while, like in the very late 80s, and then for a while there was nothing really until the early 90s, really, when bands started coming and doing shows again. I'd say for a good 4 years, I mean, the scene was pretty much dead. I'd go to Boston all the time and see bands like that. I saw Youth of Today, and I saw Gorilla Biscuits and Sheer Terror and Agnostic Front back in the Channel, and
yep,
the Rat,
Channel.
and the Rat.
Channel's the spot.
And the Channel was like matinees every Saturday and Sunday there were amazing. Not a lot of people, like, I'm older, and not a lot of people got to go to the Channel, which was I was lucky enough to see like kind of like the thrash metal first before I got to
I missed like all the early Suicidal like tours and all the thrash shows that came through there. I think my first show at the Channel was like 1990. I saw like Leeway and Breakdown, and got to see a bunch of shows, but it was the last like 2 years of the Channel.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember the Edge for a little while.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the Edge. I got to see like Shelter and like Head First and all these awesome bands there. And, so that I got a few years of that, but like you said, that was kind of the last little hurrah of Boston. Boston for a while, besides like, the Middle East and some church shows in Cambridge and a couple of random Rat shows in the mid to late 90s, it was kind of dead. It really was. There was either really big shows, like big name bands, or it was shot. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Seriously, I think really the only like bigger venue was the Paradise that was doing shows,
yeah,
and that was it. And that was it, really, back
yeah,
then.
exactly. So it was a weird time, like post cringe, you know, kind of shows, like where there was that weird time in the middle where there wasn't a lot going on.
Yeah.
And that's why people talk about, like, especially when Shadows Fall and Killswitch and Hatebreed and all these bands blew up, then they'd see these old kind of flyers. They'd be like, "Oh, that must have been insane." I'm like, "Dude, there was 80 people at that show. It was shot, you know." It's just that perspective of later on. Even some of the like classic hardcore bills, we'll post an Overcast flyer and people will be like, "Oh my God, that must have been the most insane lineup." We're like, dude, it was literally in a basement, not like a place called the basement, like someone's basement, and there was 35 people there, and it was awesome. Like, it was a blast, but like, yeah, it's not like what you think, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy that you saw Shelter at the Edge. The Edge was kind of so like small
Tiny.
and like
tiny. The window is right on the water, so you always felt like you were gonna go in, like you were gonna smash through that window.
Yeah.
It was Shelter and 411. And the place was insane. Like, it was literally bodies on top of bodies. And that was when Shelter was, it was In Defense of Reality 7-inch at times. So they were fully robed up, like with the grips down the middle, like fully Christian it out. And so they're Vic stage diving with his guitar, like in a robe. And I'm just like, 15 or 14 years old, just like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's crazy. I actually have a video that I took from Killing Time, Wrecking Crew, from the Edge that I posted on my page a couple times. I still have the I back then I was holding a huge camera that you put the VHS tape inside.
Oh yeah,
the camera. So it was about this big. So me and my friends would swap to take turns because
when your shoulder gets out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I always would love seeing that, like a dude just like, fully just on the shoulder. And Sonny from 856 is always looking at old photos for dudes holding those in the background to see, like, I know there's a video of that now.
Yeah.
Find that guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's been putting out some crazy stuff too.
Oh, totally. But man, the Edge was killer. But that era of Boston, like that, like 1990, 91, I remember seeing a flyer for that Killing Time show you're talking about. And it was when you'd get those flyers where there was like 15 shows and they were all insane. You're like, oh my God, like everyone is coming.
Yeah.
So I remember that one show. I was like, Gorilla Biscuits, Leeway, Kingpin, Maelstrom, like just.
I went to that show.
And everyone will be on it. You're like Underdog. You're trying to fit the flyer. You're like, there's too many bands. It's too bad.
The channel was so good too. I liked it too because I got to see. I saw DRI with Creator, and Creator opened up for DRI, which is insane to me because I forgot about the show, and then I looked at months back, I looked at the lineup and I was like, Testament played that show too. I was like, I don't remember that. Yeah, it was crazy. It was like Testament, Creator, and like DRI finished the show. It was crazy.
It's awesome. Yeah, the channel was the best.
So I want to talk about the reissue of Expectational Delusion and Fight Ambition to Kill. The color vinyl looks amazing. How did that come about? And literally, like the colored vinyl looks amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier with how it came out. Like, for real, we got lucky where we've known Josh over at Bullet Tooth Records for a long time. Used to do Trust Kill and stuff back in the day. So known him forever. He's been super supportive of everything that when me and Mike started Death Ray Vision, he was super right on top of it. He put out the discography, all that stuff. So he kind of, we kind of realized, man, Expectational never came out on vinyl and stuff. We're like, yeah, man, that's just kind of a shame. And this day and age, if you're gonna put out music, put it out on vinyl because it's the only way you're gonna to begin with. But we just really wanted to have it a legit vinyl release, and but it was we didn't know if we'd be able to pull it off because doing the double vinyl the way we wanted with that color schemes was a little more expensive. But we're like, hey, I mean, if we're gonna do it, we'd rather do a short run of exactly what we wanted. With Mike doing the revamped artwork and everything, and he was, luckily Josh realized like that's the way to do it. Is if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. And man, when I saw the final finished version, I was just blown away. So, and I think those are shipping now, like early, which is awesome. So they should be hitting people's soon. But yeah, man, to me, it's just great to physically have that. Like, I just wanted one for myself.
Yeah.
I think Their distributors have them now, but they sold out direct from us and Bullet Tooth. Whereas I know Revelation Records got some, and they're out there that way in record stores. But besides that, yeah, I think they sold out through our bundles right away.
Yeah, I think Revelation barely has any left, though. Honestly, I think all that
They're
stuff.
going quick, kids. Get them while you can.
Yeah, I think that stuff like went right out the door as soon as you guys like put it up. You know what I mean? Like, honestly.
Well, it's funny, man. All dudes from our scene are like, vinyl reissues. Like, not only like, you know, do I want vinyl reissues? I'm finally old enough to spend my own money on records. You know, like.
And plus the bundle package is awesome too. I'm glad that you guys did the shirts too with it. And are you guys gonna have more stuff available? With
yeah, I think
once that stuff sells out, will there still be shirts that people can grab and stuff like that?
Totally. When we had some old merch that we sort of, I think everyone cleaned their house during COVID times. So like we uncovered some merch from the last kind of reunion runs. We also, man, it's a bum out. We had a show lined up for August that obviously had to get canceled. That, like, man, I can't get into the real details in case it happens again, but it was going to be a banger, like craziness. So we kind of started to get the gears rolling on just not getting a bunch of stuff, but having some things ready. So Mike had some designs. So when this happened, we were like, yeah, we might as well put some shirts together for the bundle. Get a little bit of an online merch store going. Now that we got the Instagram account going for Overcast, which has been really cool because me and Mike were both posting a ton of stuff, and we're kind of like, it'll be cool to have this all in one spot. And the vinyl reissue gave us kind of the perfect reason to stop being lazy.
Yeah,
we do it, and it's been awesome, man. People have been sending us like hilarious photos or like crazy flyers that, man, like you said, we were playing every weekend.
Yeah,
I remember when I see them. But like I couldn't pull a lot of those days out of the ether. So I see lineups and I'm like, man, we played some killer shows, like, and then little bits and pieces will come back. But like a lot of Overcast is one like 8-year blur in a van.
Yeah.
Not
well, that's you guys
then in a minivan, then in a van.
Yeah, you guys played with everybody too. I mean, you name from like metal to like the real punk hardcore type of stuff to like screamo bands to grindcore bands. You guys played with everybody, and that's why I think you guys have like everybody loves Overcast that I talk to. I talk to a lot of different people and different kinds of bands, and they always say like those 2 albums are something special, and I think they're
awesome, man.
Special to me. Are you surprised at how much love it's gotten since you guys repressed that stuff?
Yeah, a little bit. It's funny because, at the time I remember being super like proud of what we were doing, and sometimes, but back then success was such a different term to what bands, I guess in the kind of heavier scene, like aspire for now. For us, success was like, man, we get to play shows and like get out of state. So we thought we did something pretty awesome, but like, it's hard to have perspective of that. What really blew me away is when Shadows Fall started really traveling and getting out there in the world was how many people would bring up, Overcast at a time where it wasn't as accessible. Like now you can track down stuff online or, find it. But in the early 2000s when Shadows Fall first started getting out there, man, I thought Overcast was a blip on the East Coast kind of, and we knew people in the scenes around the country knew about us, but like we'd only toured the full U.S. once, and all that, so it was pretty surprising to be in Japan and have people be super stoked on Overcast, and then and then kind of see that happen. And then the other cool thing is that as Killswitch and Shadows Fall got bigger, some people went backwards and found out about Overcast as well, which led to doing the Reborn to Kill Again and just making sure that all those old records were available.
Yeah.
So it is cool. It's very cool because like I said, we thought we'd always be a band's band, and it ended up, it was definitely true. Like,
Yeah. How did Only Death is Smiling, like, how did that come about?
It's really just to like, man, it would just be great to have all this in one spot because, we were getting asked for it a lot. So Mike D did a lot of the legwork of finding the masters. Man, I found master reel-to-reels in my basement from the Stirring the Killer 7-inch that were just
really?
like in a case. It just said Overcast. I'm like, I don't know what this is. You know, I like open it up. So it was a little work to get all that stuff, and also some of it, the master sources were pretty beat up or just not great to begin with. I'm glad we got that radio show on there, because that was one of my favorite recordings of us, and it was classic Overcast, just shit show style. McCoo showed up like 15 minutes into it happening. You know, you got lost in Lowell, which is, you don't want to get lost in Lowell, man.
Yeah.
It's awful. It was, yeah, like we ran it, things broke on the first song, like it was such a mess, and we're like, yep, that's perfect. You know, like that's
Yeah.
and you could tell we were all getting pissed off, and we got better and better as we got more and more mad about how things weren't right. You know, and it was great. It was
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh, I'm glad that it's accessible too, because I mean, I'm a Spotify guy, so it's like I can just click on that and I can go through the Overcast gambit right there of everything, you know.
Totally. That's why it was good to just finally have it like all in one spot, as opposed to having to fight to get all those different things up and find, like, because honestly, like a lot of the original stuff, Edison Records, once John Dudek passed away, it was kind of even hard to get masters and figure that stuff out and all that. And we were lucky at the times to have, small labels who helped us out. But when you're trying to get everything back together again at the end,
Yeah,
it was definitely a treasure hunt. But I'm glad it all worked out. So
yeah, it's amazing to it's crazy that it's been so long too, because I mean, Overcast started in '91, and we're talking almost 30 years, and it doesn't seem like that to me, but it's crazy to say that. It's
crazy. Well, I had to think back the other day that the first reunions are now like a decade and a half ago, and I'm like, like that feels too old. You know what I mean? Like, and those took 10 years to happen after we broke up.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy to think of that. It's been that long, and the funny part is, man, when we get together and jam, it's so much fun still. It's been a minute now. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do anything. But like I said, we were just about to start getting some stuff together.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
Go
funny. Like, we got a few lifers here where it's like, I knew Mike D like in the early days, because when Overcast first broke up, he's like, we can't break up. I don't know what to do. I got to be in a band,
Yeah.
So I think that's with us too. So it's funny to see dudes are still like hacking it out there. Like,
yeah.
I had to finally slow down, man. The road was getting too much for me.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you especially have played a million shows, so it must be a little weird now that like COVID's hit and now live shows aren't a thing,
It's crazy, because even I once Shadows Fall, once I stopped touring full time with them, and I guess that was 2016ish, I guess 14 really, but I started playing right away with Hell Night, a band from St. Louis area that I've been playing with for a while.
Yeah.
And we would play out like every other month, every couple months, but it was like still shows, and we still practiced almost once a week. And so I'm like, man, since I've been 13 years old, I've been going to band practice at least every other week, as long as I can remember. I'm like 45 now, and all of a sudden, for the last year, it stopped for the first time ever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so I played a lot more guitar and drums in my house, but it ain't the same.
Yeah. Speaking of Hell Night, I was late on that, but I was surprised on like how heavy it was. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't expecting it to be so heavy in almost like an industrial, like, metalcore way. You know what I mean? And
we're a weird band, man. We're a weird band. Like, it started before I got in the band. I saw them locally through, like, I was friends with the guy who originally was the singer, and I started skateboarding with the guitar player. And they were the first local band I saw that I was like, damn, this is crazy. And it's just that tuned down. He's tuned to so low and has this octave fuzz pedal that he like built himself that like makes it sound like, it's like a can opener tearing through the side of like an airplane. Like, it's crazy. And then and we're very the songwriting style is more like we're writing like almost like Devo songs, but then played by dudes who want it to sound like if Ministry was like a death metal band, I don't know, it's weird, but but it's super punk rock at the same time too. There's like very catchy punk rocky things to it, so it's weird. We're weird.
So what was the first thing you guys recorded? Was it Human Shelves? I
right when I got in the band, we wrote about 6 songs in like a couple weeks. We write in a way where we don't overthink. We write and then usually record all those songs within like a month and a half. which we're unfortunately not able to do anymore either. So we were banging out tons of new stuff, but we weren't doing any pre-production, anything like that, because I was like, nope, whatever we thought of the first time is the song.
Yeah.
And so it was cool. So yeah, but that's been a blast. But unfortunately, we haven't even jammed. You know, I get together and skate with Andy outside because we go to the outdoor skate park, in social distance. But that's about it. So.
Yeah, Human Shelves is so good though. Like when I heard it, I was like, wow, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this shit.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I got older and I listened to mellower stuff, but like the music I'm making is angry and crazy as anything since I was like 15.
Jumping back a little bit, when Overcast ended, how did you end up getting into Shadows Fall? I know. Were you a fan of the Somber Eyes album, or?
Yeah, and we had played a bunch with them. Like I knew Matt, the guitar. Matt he was in a band Exhumed, not the California Exhumed, like a Western Mass Exhumed.
Yeah.
Who I Overcast had played with. They were very like dirgy death metal, like just that classic like '90s death metal, like just chromatic death metal, and so I knew Matt from that. And then when he started Shadows Fall, like he gave me the early stuff right away. And Overcast actually took them out on a lot of their first out-of-state shows, so we became good friends. And then when Overcast broke up and Phil was things weren't working out, Matt actually approached me at the last Overcast show in New Haven, like before, like I think the feedback was still like ringing out. And I'm like, bro, like, give me a minute to like, I don't know, like change my shirt, like. Yeah. And I, at first I didn't know if I wanted to be in a band yet. And I love the Somber Eyes stuff, but I just wasn't sure. And then Matt convinced me to come out, and he played me. I think the first songs I heard were Serenity and First Noble Truth, were the stuff they were working on, post Somber Eyes. And I was like, all right, and yeah, man, I was like, this is sick. And we started jamming right away and writing stuff. And then got things happened real fast with Shadows Fall. We recorded like a 5-song demo for labels, and we were signed super fast to Central Media.
Yeah.
And before I had a second to figure out what was happening, we were on tour. And that was it. 20 years later, I was like, oh, all right, what happened?
Yeah, and you guys played insane fests and stuff like that, like with Shadows Fall.
We just didn't stop, man. The first few years of Shadows Fall were, that's the most I've ever played. We played anywhere with anyone, anytime. We would do such bizarre tours. We went back-to-back tours that were, it was Christian, Dismember, Cataclysm, and Shadows Fall right into King Diamond.
Wow.
And then after that into Glassjaw. Those were 3
really?
tours we did in a row. So we were literally play with anyone in front of any scene. We didn't fit anywhere yet because that new wave of American blah, blah, blah hadn't happened yet. So we were like, we'd jump off a death metal show. We'd go play the emo show. We'd hop on the hardcore show, and then we'd play the old school metal show. We didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And we became the band that people were like, oh my God, Shadows Fall's on this bill again. Like, Jesus Christ, these guys just went away. And and then it just, the touring machine started, and it didn't stop from 2000 till 2014. We were just touring nonstop.
Yeah. And
it was crazy.
Did you record 6 albums with Shadows Fall? Was it that many studio albums?
Yeah,
or?
Of One Blood, Art of Balance, War Within, Threads, Retribution, Fire from the Sky. Yep, 6. So 6 full lengths. One kind of comp of like, they weren't necessarily B-sides like that. Fallout from the War was a lot of songs that either weren't finished that we finished, or were finished but didn't make the record. And then we did the Cro-Mags, Only the Witness, and Dangerous Toys cover. So that was like, it was 7 songs, but wasn't really an album.
Yeah.
Like 6 records and some other stuff.
What happened with Shadows Fall at the end? How come you kind of moved?
Oh, we just all hated each other, and no. It really, honestly, we got to a point where, we kind of plateaued in like 2007, where at that time it seemed like anything was possible. We're on a major label, we were doing really well, making good money, and doing huge tours, and then things sort of just plateaued where didn't get any bigger, then started getting a little smaller. And I had my first kid, and we were out on the road, and it was starting to become like a grind. And then once I had my second kid, I was like, man, I missed so much with Arabella that I didn't want it to happen again, unless this was the best thing for us, But it was tough because we were, making ends meet, but like by being on the road 7-8 months a year, because at that point, by 2012, 13, 14, you didn't make money off record sales. There wasn't any other extra income besides touring then. You know, earlier days, man, we sold a lot of records, man. We were selling hundreds of thousands of copies of each album, and you made, especially when we were on Century Media, we didn't spend a lot to make those albums, so we were recouping and making some money, so you could take time off is more what you could come home for a couple months and not be broke.
Yeah.
We weren't rich ever. You know, we were playing heavy metal, man. You ain't rich, but we were able to not grind ourselves in the dust, and spend times with family and all that. And then by the end, it was either a choice, like you either need to be on the road full time or we can't survive. And I had seen the world 10 times and was tired and had, 2 kids, and it was time to change. And also then John, honestly, a big part of it was John was splitting assignment between us and Anthrax towards the end. And Anthrax was just too good of a gig for him to say no to. It was dream gig as a kid. Yeah. And we weren't on the level of like, we can give you what you're getting there. So we didn't want to start having different dudes. We did a few fill-in tours when we had to. We were like, all right, we need a couple weeks. And our friend Felipe from Massachusetts band Acaro filled in, and he's sick, but we didn't. Metal seems to do that, where all of a sudden you go to see a band one time and you're like, it's one dude and dudes, like other guys, and you're like, fuck are these guys? And it's weird how that happens in metal a lot. We were a band where we were like, man, it's been the 5 of us since 2002 when Bittner joined, and that was, and then we didn't want to just start to become a third of who we were and all that. It was gonna be silly. Yeah. So it was an easy choice, but it was tough to adjust to. Like, I'd been on the road for 20 plus years, and then I had to come home. So, but it was a time. Yeah. If we would have been making millions of dollars, it wouldn't have been time. I'll tell you.
Yeah. No.
Because we were we were still Fire from the Sky is on par with all the best stuff we've done. So we creatively, we were still writing tons of music, and but it just became, I don't want to say a business decision, but it just became like I had to make a choice, like be home for the family and take care of business, or just run around like an idiot and headbang.
Understandable, definitely understandable. So what Downpour? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, a missed opportunity in some ways, because man, we when we got together, it was basically Matt LeBreton, who's from Western Mass, Fitchburg area, started jamming with Derek Kurzweil, who I've known forever. He was in Shadows Fall for a minute, where he filled in for a Japanese tour before Jason joined the band, and was almost our drummer. Like, before Jason joined, he was filling in for a while. Yeah. So I've known him forever. Matt was a sick guitar player from this band Frozen and a few other bands in the area, Massachusetts. They sent me some tunes at a time where I was not looking to do anything. Shadows Fall was winding down. I was just 2 kids, just super overwhelmed, like it was crazy. And then he sent me the music, and I was like, oh man, this is so good. I was like, well, you know what? I was like, I don't know if I have time to write stuff. Like, I don't know. And I started listening to the stuff, and I wrote like 5 songs in like a couple days, and I had a home studio at the time, and I recorded all the vocals, and I sent it out to them, and they were like, well, this is done, So, but I was living in St. Louis at the time. So between Shadows Fall on the road and me not being there, we didn't get to really jam. So we wrote it all via email. And then I went to Massachusetts, and we jammed like crazy for a weekend, and recorded a demo at the end of the weekend. And we were like, holy shit, we are good. Like, it was like, like, all right, we got to do something. So we just self-recorded an album with this dude, Rucho. And man, it came out way better than we even thought. We then sort of lined up some stuff where we had some people interested in helping us out, and then everything had to get shelved. Just life got in the way. Everything got shelved for different personal reasons for people, like just too busy, this and that. Took forever to finish it. We finally got finished. We went and Pledge Music. They imploded. That screwed up all the vinyl release, and like it was just a disaster. Yeah. And finally, like, the CD version came out, and we're super glad. We basically just wanted to get the music out. We were never planning on touring any of that stuff. Yeah. But man, if I would have been in Massachusetts and we could have done more, and if life didn't get in the way for a few just personal reasons that different guys had to deal with. Man, that album was a banger.
Yeah.
And who knows what we could have done if we were like a real band, but we just couldn't get together.
Yeah.
But man, I'm glad those songs got finished. And we talk about it all the time. There's like probably 4 songs instrumentally done that we didn't record vocals for. So we want to do those at some point. We would still play shows if we ever got to an opportunity, but it would perfect world scenario type stuff. But
so is that's the last thing that you've put out musically?
Hell Night put out Unlimited Destruction, which is not a compilation. It was like, we recorded an EP. We had 2 other EPs. We put them all on one full length. So I guess technically that's the most recent. The Downpour stuff. The thing is, the Downpour stuff started in like 2014.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. There was a YouTube teaser that we joked said, coming summer 2015, 2019 or something later. We were like, oh, it's going to come out in a couple months. You know?
Well, that's why I thought it was the last thing that you
totally, man. It was a slow burn. It gave us time to really like focus on some cool stuff with it. We weren't rushed. And honestly, like, we did a cover of the song Mountain by this band Great Northern, and it's still one of my favorite things I've ever recorded, as well as some of the more ambient stuff, like the acoustic track we did, Still Waiting, and all that. And one of the songs, the main riff, was co-written by Derek and then Mark Morton from Lamb of God.
Oh, no
had been jamming with him up in space, and he had this riff, and he's like, you know what, man? He's like, keep it. You know. And we took that and built a song around that. So it was just a cool, weird, collective kind of writing thing that resulted in some very original, weird tunes. So, but unfortunately, just didn't have the ability to kind of take it to another level.
Yeah, well, the good thing is it's out now. So, I mean, it's out in the world now.
That's it. We just wanted to get it online, get it up so people could just listen to it. We're like, man, these songs are good. But, like, literally, I'm just, like, emailing them to people randomly, you know?
I love the Overcast page, too. Like you said before, with the flyers that you guys have been putting out. I know I sent a few flyers that I had made to you guys, and I still have the Dover one that I made with Tupac on it.
The Tupac one, man. I love, like, that era of flyers were the best. It was like basically like find like a cool image, tape some shit to it, and head down to Kinko's. Yeah.
I also have the As I Bleed. I didn't make this one, but I still have this in my possession.
Nice. That one, he had a little more like layout skills there. Like it looks almost too pro. You know.
Yeah. Well, but you guys posted the Converge show from Safe and Sound with Disembodied, and I made that flyer, and I don't even have that flyer. And when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, I made that!" I was like, "No, it's crazy!" Like
that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's crazy. I went in my attic not too long ago and found like a treasure trove, and it was not just Overcast flyers. It was like a lot of it was from the early '90s, like cringe shows, channel like lineups.
Oh, sick.
You know, like all that stuff. Like, man, some of those shows, like you just would look at it in the lineup and be like, that had to be a bloodbath. You know, you see like those old POW MIA like benefits.
Oh, I love those.
Like, oh my god, this must have been the most brutal show ever. But anyway, yeah. So I found a treasure trove, and man, some of those are so classic. And I love finding the old flyers, man. I kept as many as I could. A ton lost to like, you know, to just this travel and moving and all that. But man, a lot survived. A lot more than I thought.
Yeah. Now, what got you to move out to the Midwest, like from Massachusetts?
My wife's originally from here, and when we first met, I was still traveling and touring, so it just made more sense. We honestly didn't plan on staying here kind of full time, and then just worked out that way. I ended up working for a guitar company out here, Alvarez Guitars, and you know, it just kind of worked out, and we're still here, and still not like I miss Boston a ton. I miss the ocean a ton. But yeah, it's been working out just for the family out here, so.
Oh, that's awesome. I thought you were still living in Massachusetts. That's why, like in the beginning with the time frame, when I didn't get.
I totally spaced that because I forget myself. I still have an 857 phone number. I've lived here for 7 years. I just got a St. Louis driver's license a year and a half ago, even though I've lived here for like 7 years. You know, like I just didn't want to didn't want to give in, and but now it's totally official. Although I'm like gonna go watch the Patriots in a minute and yell at my TV and do all that stuff still, but you know.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. All right. Well, usually before we end things, I usually do a little rapid fire questions. So
Cool.
I'll hit you up with some rapid fire questions.
Awesome.
My first one is favorite New England punk or hardcore band of all time for you.
Oh, that's so hard. I don't want to go so obscure and crazy, but literally my two favorite bands from Massachusetts were probably Dive and Arise. And Kingpin's got to be in there too. No one knows them unless you were in the scene at the time, but man, they were just so fucking good.
Yeah, Kingpin. I saw Kingpin a couple times at the channel, actually.
Kingpin were so good. And Arise just were like the band that got me to think of like things in a different way, like, you know, bringing in the Neurosis kind of influences and weird death metal stuff, and they were crazy. But then Only the Witness probably is the one I listen to the most still. I can put on Only the Witness anytime and still be super stoked. The riffs, man, the riffs. So.
Yeah. Well, and you guys had a split 7-inch with Arise too, which was
totally
awesome too.
Arise were the shit. So yeah
definitely. All right, my second question is, what was the first punk or hardcore show you attended?
It was Leeway, Breakdown, Only Living Witness, and Said and Done were on it. It was at the channel. I had been to like kind of local punk rock-ish shows, but they were more like Battle of the Bands, where like one band kind of punk-ish, but not like real deal.
Yeah.
So imagine going from like that to seeing a Leeway Breakdown show at the channel.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, these people are gonna kill each other. And next thing I know, you know, first I'm in the back. By the end, I'm swinging off the thing above the stage and just like using the monitors to launch off and stage out crazy. It was nuts. I was sold. That was it.
Yeah, I was at that same show. We might have been shoulder to shoulder at that show.
That's hilarious. Yeah, man.
Well, it was crazy.
It was cool. I couldn't believe I bought like the Only Witness demo in the parking lot, and the Said and Done 7-inch. I remember being like, wait, you can just buy stuff from the bands like in the parking lot? Like, I don't listen to music. So I'm like, wait, no, you got to go to Strawberries Records and Tapes, spend $20 on, on a cassette. And then, I was like, whoa, this is, what is this,
Yeah, and that parking lot was huge, too. So there was,
it
was enormous.
But, man, what a show. So.
Yeah, especially when Breakdown played Sick People. I was waiting for that song, like that whole show. I was like, oh, I can't wait till and plus I was a huge Born to Expire, like, fan.
Totally. Like, the first Born to Expire and Desperate Measures, man, have so many riffs. They were such a huge influence on early Overcast. Even the way I sang on the first stuff was more Eddie Leeway than it was like screaming. And I just couldn't, he could do the Ozzy like impersonation better than I could, So.
All right. My next question is all-time favorite punk hardcore show you played.
Oof, holy shit.
Or you could give me like 2 or 3 because you played a million.
There's a couple that stand out. The Overcast played with Killing Time and the Misfits downstairs Middle East. Granted, it was Michael Graves' Misfits, but at the time was like as close as we thought we were gonna get.
Yeah.
And there was an all ages show the first night we didn't play, and then the second night was 18 plus. And Jerry Only opened the back door and snuck in like literally like 30 underage kids right before they went on, who all just don't like. And he told me, he's like, "You got one shot, just run and dive into the crowd and don't stop." Or, he's like, "Now go." And just opened the door, and I was like, that is the coolest shit ever. So that's up there. But man, Overcast played some good ones, man. It's tough. Yeah. It's tough. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I got to go all the way back to like our third show ever. Overcast played with the Mighty Mighty Bosstones at EM Lowe's before it was the Palladium in Worcester.
That's great.
EM Lowe's. And the Freeze was on it. Man, who else? I think Street Dogs. Like, just, it was crazy. And I was 15 years old.
Wow.
My belt broke, and I was wearing these giant fucking pants because it was 1991, and they fell off, and I was wearing Mickey Mouse boxers for the rest of the show, and we played with the Bosstones. So. And I remember there was like 2,000 people there. It was our third show. I'm like, every show's gonna be like this, and plus it was the Bosstones, so there was like girls there, and you're like, oh, shows are awesome. And then I started playing real hardcore shows. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So they're in someone's basement, and there's 15 people here, and they're just dudes beating each other up. And I'm like, okay.
It's crazy how the Boston's like I saw them so many times at the channel, and then I had no idea they would blow up like they
No,
did.
no idea.
Like,
Especially then, because those shows were so much fun, but they were also way more like aggressive of a band than yeah, they skanked it up and they like
yeah,
would get down, but like man, they also were hard, you know.
yeah.
Like
All right, my next question is all-time favorite punk hardcore show you attended, like you watched and were blown away by.
Ooh, let's see. Uh you know that shelter show at the Edge will stand out in my mind forever. Um Man, Quicksand at the Channel was one that'll with Endless and Kingpin will stand out forever. And it's not a hardcore show, but Clash of the Titans with Slayer, Anthrax,
Yeah,
Megadeth, and Alice in Chains randomly.
yeah. Well, I came from, like I said a million times in my talks, I came from like a heavy metal background. It was like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then it turned into thrash metal. And I was a big Slayer fan and Anthrax and you know Testament, Death Angel, and stuff like that. So, um, so I can feel the Slayer, Megadeth.
Yeah.
You know, I was a huge thrash metal fan before I really got into hardcore, anyways.
Yep. So yeah, I got lucky to see a lot of early great hardcore shows, like you know, but this thing they all kind of it's tough to they all bleed into one after a while. Where like there's just so many sick shows back then, it's crazy. And some of my favorites were really small. Like actually, were you at the Shelter Riot at the Cambridge Church?
No,
The actual full scale riot, like that will always be the most legendary show I saw.
Yeah,
Because that was insane. You know, like people with hockey sticks on tables and just chaos. But those shows at the church, I remember seeing like Endpoint with like Strife and Mouthpiece and like those type of shows where it was that like there was no stage anymore. It was just people, like those type of youth crew shows. Like there's nothing that'll compare to that to anyone who's never seen that.
Yeah.
And like, that still happens these days, but like that type of show, that like experience, that's just something that only hardcore has, where if you've never been in the pile like that, it's hard to describe,
Yeah, that's true.
Those are the best. So
I have a funny story with like when I went to the Paradise to see Cro-Mags and Burn played. I always kind of dressed like youth crew-ish, you know what I mean, back in the day. And I remember getting off the tee and walking up, and all the Boston punks, because I'm from the suburbs of New Hampshire, you know what I mean? And they took one look at us and they were like, "Go back to the suburbs, you know." They said a couple expletives, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I'll never forget. I was just like, I just hung my head, just walked.
And meanwhile, when you got ready, you were like, "Oh, I'm rocking the coolest gear for the show. I want to go on there," like so funny.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It was funny how there was so many divisions then between types of like hardcore. You're like, come on, man. There's only 100 of us total anyway. Let's all just go to the same show and be cool.
Yeah, I know. It's just like it sticks in my mind to this day that they would just like. I mean, it didn't hurt my feelings that bad, but I was just like, what can I say? I was
That's
just like,
hilarious. Yeah.
All right, I got a couple more questions. What was the last movie you watched?
Last movie I watched, it was definitely a kids movie, because that's all I watch these days with the kids. What was the last movie you watched? Inside Out. No, I think that was the last one I watched.
No, that wasn't.
So, but the last show, I finally, when the kids fall asleep, I've finally been catching up on real TV and been watching The Boys lately. That's
it's amazing.
So just finally caught up and finished all that.
So good.
So good.
Okay, my next question: favorite all-time horror movie for you?
Favorite all-time horror movie? The first Halloween, but just basically the first few Halloweens besides 3.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I don't know if you read comics or not, but DC or Marvel?
I was definitely a Marvel guy. I was big comics early, like old school X-Men, like when it went like, I collected for a while. Once they went like, it was all like New Mutants and started X Factor and all that stuff, I started getting a little bit lost, but I was pretty big from like the mid 80s to like probably 1990 ish, where I was collecting like crazy.
Yeah.
And of course thinking they were, it's a gold mine now, and just watching all that.
Yeah. I know, I got a bunch too, and then I'm like, these aren't worth anything.
Yeah.
All right, my last question is, if you've been listening to any hip hop, I'm like a hip hop guy too. I've gone to billion hip hop shows, and I love hip hop. What have you been
Yep.
listening to for hip hop? If you've been listening to anything at all?
I have been. I have a like underground hip hop guru friend of mine who turns me on to a bunch of stuff. And I've been listening to this guy Billy Woods a lot lately, who's just he's from New York and he's just killer. Besides that, I tend to trend not super old school, but like mid 90s. 93 is my wheelhouse year for hip hop because to me it's still the greatest year in hip hop history. Where you had Illmatic 93 till infinity, De La dropped Bloom Mind State. You had Wu-Tang 36 Chamber, like 93, 94. Hip hop, hieroglyphics, that whole crew.
Yeah,
that's where my wheelhouse is. So I listen to a ton of that. And new hip hop tends to be in that kind of like realm of I need flow, I need jazzy beats, like so.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. 90s is my niche right there. And when I was going to shows, I do a lot of videotaping the shows too. That's the only stuff I'll really record is just 90s stuff or new bands like you said, new MCs like you said that sound have that sound.
Yeah, because there is still good underground hip hop out there, and I'm glad I have a friend who turns it on to me. Granted, a lot of times he sends me like kind of mixtapes, so I don't catch a lot of who the artists are, and I'm just like glad to have some new beats. But another friend who runs a label called Nature Sounds is always sending me killer stuff as well. So everything they put out is great. He does a lot of R.A. the Rugged Man and stuff like that. So so that's a killer label. But yeah, so you got to keep some hip hop flowing.
Now, did I read somewhere that you did something with Necro, or was that?
Yeah, I did. It was a pretty random tune because it was more of a death metal-y tune. He had the drummer for Suffocation, Mark from Lamb of God. Steve DiGiorgio played bass, and I did the chorus, but he wrote it like and I kind of like sort of like hardcore sang it, talked it through the thing, and he did verses literally over blast beats though. It's over blast beats.
Yeah,
and then
I read that.
I was like,
whoa, he did stuff with Necro.
It was a funny go to the studio in New York like late night like with Necro like before. I think Necro's kind of cleaned up his stuff these days, but he was partying back then, and it was pretty fun. I wish if we would have had more time to all be involved. I think everyone kind of sent their stuff and he kind of got copy and pasted. It's still cool, but I think it could have been like crazy, But it was fun. I always like doing something different. So, and he's always like that dude's always trying to push some limits.
Oh yeah. It surprised me when I saw your name in there. I was like, whoa! I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, like lyrically, because I didn't write it, But I definitely had to be like, all right, I'm gonna put on my hard hat. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate this. I didn't want to take up a lot of your time. I know I have kids and you have kids, and I know Sundays are pretty important family days for me. I don't know if it is for you, but
indeed, man, it was good. Yeah, I'm glad because I screwed up, like I said, the time, and I was doing yard work, and luckily, like it just started getting too dark when I came in, and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta check what time I was supposed to. Oh no. So yeah,
no
good,
problem.
Man. I'm glad it worked out. So yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and thank you again for taking the time out and talking with me, and I appreciate it, man. I hope you have a good night.
Indeed, you as well, man. Thanks.
All right, brother. Take care.